in South Korea. Everyone has the right to quality education, where the well-being of the student is always prioritized. Because of this, some students feel untouchable and think that the school is their kingdom. That's why they believe they can bully their classmates, organize fights, and even form gangs. In some schools, the students have control over their own teachers. That's why the victims, not knowing what to do, simply prefer to run away or put an end to their suffering. Seeing how alarming this situation is, the Ministry of Education decides to take drastic measures. That's why the OPDE, the Office for the Protection of Educational Rights, was created. Its mission is to correct the behavior of aggressors and anyone who threatens education. For this, they have a very special authority that allows them to act outside the rules. They are even allowed to discipline students using the traditional way. Inspector Na went to a middle school where recently one of the students met a tragic end. But the bullies, instead of stopping and reflecting, became even more aggressive, all because their leader was the son of a congressman. That's exactly why the principal tries to bribe the inspector, but the inspector doesn't accept. Instead, he tells him that adults can't be afraid of children, because that would cause the end of the world. Then he teaches a class in the victim's classroom. There, he asks the students if they know the reason why he made that terrible decision. The students remain silent. The teacher orders them to do some push-ups as punishment, but the deputy's son yells at them not to move. Since he thought he was untouchable, the inspector tells him that no student is above the others, so he disciplines him. And seeing how strict he was, he decides to obey. At lunchtime, the bullies cut in line. Inspector Na catches them and tells them to get in line. The student not only ignores him, but also challenges him. Because of that, he disciplines him again in front of everyone. At the end of the day, the bully picks on his classmate Yoon Seok. He tells him that he has to clean his share, or else he'll beat him up. The inspector wouldn't just stand by, so he goes to his house and confronts his father. He tells him that the students have no power, so he grabs him by the ear and takes him to clean the school bathrooms. Feeling humiliated, the boy decides to hurt himself to pretend that the inspector attacked him. The next day, the deputy goes to the school and tells the inspector that he has to stop. He tells him that he's just doing his job, because if a teacher were afraid of a child, he wouldn't be able to teach him properly. Seeing that the inspector wouldn't stop, the bullies take it out on poor Yoon Seok. He thinks he doesn't stand a chance, so he goes up to the roof of his school. The inspector grabs him and asks if he wants to die. The boy tearfully insists he wants to live. Because of this, the inspector tells him not to take any more beatings, but to run and tell an adult. Afterwards, the two of them go to eat. The boy tells him that no one stands up to the bully because his father has a lot of power and can ruin a family. The inspector tells him that it's okay because he has a support system that protects him. And all the students have it too, even though sometimes it seems like it doesn't work well. For his part, the deputy goes to the Minister of Education. He tells him that he must put an end to the OPDE since his son is suffering mistreatment. The minister tells him that he can't do it because it was just created and his son's school is the first to be inspected. The deputy threatens to ruin his career if he doesn't cancel the OPDE. The next day, the congressman had a press conference, but the minister got ahead of him and exposed all his dirty laundry. The congressman asks him to fix that because they're from the same political party, but the minister tells him that children's education comes first. Afterwards, the deputy is arrested, and his son has a formal harassment complaint filed against him. Days later, the boy returns to school, but now, his supposed friends turn against him and tell him they don't have to put up with him anymore, so they start to bully him. For his part, feels guilty for not helping his friend when he needed him. Inspector Na tells him that it's not his fault, but the adult's fault for not protecting them. Afterwards, the bully pours gasoline in the classroom with his classmates inside. Luckily, Inspector Na arrives. When he sees him, the boy wants to leave, but the inspector tells him he can't go until he feels what his classmate felt. Then, he throws his lighter on the floor, and the bully is surrounded by fire. Crying, he begs the inspector to save him and admits that he's to blame for everything. Afterwards, the inspector tells him that what he's feeling now is what his classmate felt before making that tragic decision. Unlike his classmate, he will have the chance to turn his life around. Here we see what happened to the victim. He followed the protocol. He reported the abuse, but the principal himself told him to change schools. Afterwards, the congressman used his power to harm the victim's father. That's why the boy had no choice but to make that fatal decision. After that, they reopened the victim's case. The 3 bullies were arrested and exposed on the OPDE's website. The principal also had to take responsibility for his crimes. That's how the school became a school. Again, although the first case was a success, there were parents who were against the OPDE, but the Minister of Education had already taken measures for these kinds of situations, so he warns that anyone who interferes with education will be punished. Yes. The next day, a new student arrives at the technical school. This was one of the 3 worst schools in the country. Gunde chose it because it had advanced mechanics, but the students looked older than the teachers themselves. But that wasn't the worst part. They controlled everything. The school was divided into 2 gangs, the mechanics students and the electrical students. Because of that, they were constantly fighting. They did all this to be recruited by Boss Yan, a senior who picked the best fighters and recruited them for his gang. He made a lot of money as a delinquent, and because of that, the others wanted to be like him. That's why they fought with all their strength, so they could be chosen. Inspector Na arrived at the school and was ready to straighten out those troublemakers, although the principal warned him that he would need reinforcements because they were really dangerous. Meanwhile, in the workshop, the gang leader forced the weaker ones to fight each other. The loser would be the measure of strength. Gunde didn't want to do it, so the other boy loses on purpose. The measure of strength would take the hits and had to say a number depending on how much it hurt. After leaving school, Gunde helps the boy carry his backpack. When they arrive at his house, he invites him to eat noodles. There the boy says he should switch schools because he won't learn what he needs there. While talking with the boy, Gunde realizes that he is very kind and really wants to study. The next day, the inspector arrives at the workshop, and it turns out that Gunde was an undercover inspector. They chose him because he looks like a nerd and can pass as a student. At lunchtime, he provokes the students to follow them to the gym. The inspector was waiting for them. He tells them that they won't leave unless they start studying for real, or as a last resort, they can defeat him. The bullies choose to fight him, but the inspector was much more skilled than all of them together. With great skill, he manages to defeat them all. Afterwards, he shows them his busy schedule. The leaders of each group decide to join forces and attack him at the same time, but the inspector stops them. Seeing his incredible strength, the gang members start to behave. When they started the class, they didn't have any books, so the best student who did have a book had to copy it onto the blackboard. But the bullies still thought they were tough and said they didn't have any pens. The inspector tells them to use the ink from their bodies then. Then he erases everything in 3 minutes, and those who didn't copy are punished. That's how he gets the whole class to behave, but the leaders of each gang kept being stubborn. That's why Inspector Na decides to change his strategy. The next class was practical, and they had to check a car's brakes. Since the boys weren't cooperating, Inspector Nat decides to show them the importance of brakes. He drives with them wildly and parks the car perfectly. This scares the bullies, but the other boys were very happy. The next class was taught by the best student, but the bullies were bothering him. When Inspector Nat wanted to correct them, he defended them. Gunde asks him, "Why did you do that?" The boy replies that he really likes attending classes and doesn't want any more trouble. At night, the bullies were locked inside the school and were trying to escape. For some reason, Gunde had a Swiss Army knife, and thanks to that, they managed to get out. Then they go straight to Chief Jan to tell him what's happening at the school. Since he was their superior, he decides to help them, goes with his motorcycle, and confronts Inspector Na. The fight seemed tough, but the inspector let himself get caught on purpose. He did it so the kids would get excited. And while they were celebrating, the inspector gets up. He tells him that he planned to bring him back to school to show his classmates that not even the coolest one is above education. In the next scene, we find out that Inspector Na was a former Special Forces captain, which means he was the best of the best. That's exactly why they hired him, so that no one could beat him. Back at the school, some gang members went to rescue Boss Jan. The inspector warns them that if they set foot in the school, they will be considered his enemies and he will show them no mercy. The thugs don't pay much attention to him and attack him all at once. But the inspector doesn't hold back and takes them all down in a brutal way. Seeing that their heroes were defeated, the students no longer feel like rebelling. So they beg the inspector for forgiveness, but he tells them that the one they should apologize to is the boy they've been bullying. He forgives them and tells them that he just wants to learn. The inspector tells them that now they will be free, and if they want, they can leave the school, but they can't drag others into their bad decisions. After this, the school went back to being a normal school. Tattoos were banned, and those who don't want to change are punished as the law indicates. With this, there are 2 successful cases for the OPDE. In the next scene, we discover the main reason why the OPDE was created. Inspector Na was going to marry a teacher, and she wanted to reform the delinquents and believed that all students deserve a quality education. But one of her students took her life, but since he was a minor, he received the minimum sentence. That's why Inspector Na tried to finish him off, but the minister stopped him and told him there was another way to avenge his daughter. That means the minister is Inspector Na's father-in-law. Together, they decided to honor the teacher's memory and fulfill her wish. The next day, they have a new case. A student is an influencer with more than 500,000 followers. She's so famous that she streams at her school. Her teachers tried to treat her like any other student, but she could stop them. She would retaliate and upload malicious videos. Because of this, her tutor tells her that he caught her editing one of her videos, so he wants her to clear things up. Jerry, instead of reflecting, uploaded a video accusing his teacher of abuse. Because of that, it was allowed. His fans found out his number, the school's number, and even his wife's number. It was allowed. Internet trolls started attacking him. The teacher tried to clear things up, but nothing he did seemed to work, so he made a fatal decision. But even then, they didn't stop. The trolls attacked the teacher's family. The math teacher knew it was all a hoax, so she told Jerry to clear up the misunderstanding. But she used her social media to play the victim. Because of the controversy, the principal ordered the teachers to give her special treatment so she wouldn't expose them anymore. Since it was a girls' school, they told Gunde that he had to infiltrate as a schoolgirl. He was willing to do anything, but no one would believe he's a woman. So that's why they call Inspector Rim. She was also a former Special Forces agent and was a bit crazy. Jerry's friend tries to intimidate her. She asks her to show a photo from before her surgery. The inspector explains she had breast surgery, not facial, because large breasts bothered her during exercise. Then she kicks Jerry's phone and tells him that deliveries in the classroom are forbidden because they violate educational rights. Then their phones are confiscated and the rules of the OPDE are explained to them. The girls complain, and because of that, Inspector Rim takes them out to the field to discipline them. Then she introduces herself to her new partner. Gunde is scared because that woman is really crazy. Inspector Na tells her that she can do whatever she wants, as long as she doesn't seriously hurt anyone. Then it's time to leave. Jerry wanted to leave without cleaning the class. In fact, he wanted the teacher to do it. That's why the inspector grabs him and tells him it's time to play the mirror game. When he's done cleaning, he should be able to see his pretty reflection on the floor. Later, the inspectors also have to go home. But the inspector orders Hanrin to check the girls' social media to make sure they're not posting anything bad. She didn't want to do it, so she asks Gunde what his military rank is. He tells her that he's rank 5, and since she was first, he tells her that from now on she'll follow his orders. The next day, they discover that there were many malicious posts with photos of the teacher. Because of this, the inspector disciplines them again with exercise, but this makes Jerry even angrier. So he posts things about his teacher. Scared, decides to quit her job at the academy because her location had been revealed on the internet. The next day, Jerry changes her strategy, acts like a good girl, and also makes the whole class look good. The teacher enjoys teaching like this, and it's a momentary relief. When leaving school, Jerry looks for the teacher and tells her that they should do a live stream together to clear things up. But the teacher replies that she needs to think about it. The next day, the inspector talks to the teacher and asks her why she's so afraid. She confesses that there are many posts about her all over the internet, and she's afraid that one of them could ruin her life like it did to Jerry's teacher. He tells her what happened to his fiancée, and that's why he asks her to be strong. If the students aren't corrected in time, they'll end up hurting more people. The teacher is still hesitating, so the inspector tells her why they came to her school. Many of her students sent letters asking for help for their teacher. They didn't want to keep seeing her teach while she was scared. This convinces her, and she decides to confront Jerry. As Inspector Na says, if adults were afraid of children, it would be the end of the world. That's why she calls Jerry up to the board when she refuses to submit to old-fashioned discipline. In the end, it's Jerry who gives in, and Inspector Rim is the happiest of all. At night, Jerry was furious and wanted to get back at her teacher, but Gunde had already acted. He hacked her account and posted the original video of her supposed abuse. In it, Jerry laughs at the end and mocks all her followers. So Jerry is the one who gets cancelled. The teacher was worried about her. But suddenly Jerry shows up at her house. The girl was upset and tells her that her life is over because of her. So before leaving, she says she will take her with her. The teacher tries to defend herself, but Jerry was crazy. In the end, the teacher trips and falls out the window. Luckily, the inspector jumps in to save her. Then Inspector Rim arrives and tells Jerry that she will grant her wish. The girl keeps acting crazy, but the inspector was even crazier. In the end, she corners her, and Jerry begs her to please forgive her. Then they go to the inspector. Everyone was scared, but Inspector Rim knew he was fine. When he gets up, he tells everyone not to worry because he sweats red. The next day, the minister gives his report on another successful case, but his rival holds a press conference and reveals that the Minister of Education created the OPDE to avenge his daughter. So it's not about education, as they say, but a tool for his revenge. The minister and the inspector already had a plan for this. They just had to ignore it. For his part, Gunde wanted to transfer to another department, but the minister catches him and tells him he won't transfer him unless something serious happens. The next case was about a boy who assaulted his teacher. That teacher was very popular on social media because his teaching method had helped many of his students get into the best universities. The teacher, for his part, didn't want his school to be investigated because his exams were coming up, and the students needed to start preparing. Even so, they have to investigate. When the inspector questions the student, he acts very aggressively and tells her to leave him alone. Right away, everyone at the school admired the teacher, and that's why they believed the boy was the problem. Then they question the teacher, and he says that the boy is very arrogant and that he finds his subject very boring. He was the best in the class, so he didn't understand why he would ruin his future with something like that. The teacher claims that the boy started acting more aggressively after he went to visit his parents, but the boy had a different version. When the teacher visited his parents, he reported their shop, and because of that, it was shut down. In addition, he made his private tutor stop giving him lessons. All of this made him unable to hold back his anger, and he ended up attacking him. The teacher, for his part, wanted them to show mercy to the boy. Inspector Na and the teacher got along very well, since it seemed that the inspector admired him a lot because of his attitude. Inspector Rim asks him what's wrong, and the inspector replies that he simply admires the teacher. Because of this, he thinks his opinion might be biased, and that he can't make a fair judgment. For his part, discovered that the top 10 students go to the same academy. When he went to investigate, the academy told him they only accept students by invitation. As he was leaving the academy, he ran into the boy from the other school. This teacher invites him to eat, and there he tells him that school is still difficult, but now he can actually study, and he's not being bullied like before. Then the bullies arrive, and it turns out they're very good friends now. Later, the inspector was running and shouting to let off steam. That's when she remembers how she met her superior. She was being bullied. And one day, an adult showed up to help her. She admired him and worked hard to emulate him, but now she doesn't know why he became biased and only listened to the teacher's side. The next day, the inspector confronts the teacher and tells him that the top 9 students attend his private academy, all except for number 1, who was the boy that attacked him. In other words, the teacher was trying to harm him so that his own students would be the best. The teacher tries to deny it, but Yeri had confessed everything. She was also a victim of the teacher. She wanted to join the academy, but the teacher only accepted students from wealthy families, and that's why Yeri ended up going to another school. Even after all this, the teacher decides to keep pretending. Days later, the teacher meets with the mother of one of his students. She tells him that her daughter needs to get the highest grade, and for that to happen, the top student shouldn't attend the exam. That way, her daughter can be among the top 10. The teacher tells her not to worry because everything is already taken care of. In the next scene, we see that the inspector was still upset and wanted to take it out on someone. Gunde, scared, tells her to calm down. The inspector knows that the teacher is the culprit, so he has been investigating him in secret. They didn't tell her because she can't lie and would have given them away. After venting, she apologizes to the inspector. But suddenly, the police arrive and arrest them, even arresting the Minister of Education. The teacher reportedly had many contacts and significant power, orchestrating everything so no one disturbed him during exams. The student's mother was happy because the teacher also gave her all the answers to the exam. That way, her daughter could get the highest grade. For his part, Gunde was not arrested because he is just a public official. The minister asks him to bring a document so that he can be transferred, but all of this was part of his plan. Then the exams arrive, and the OPDE is released, but the minister is put on trial for using the OPDE for his own purposes. The teacher, for his part, was terrified because his student got a 0. Apparently, someone changed the exams. That's why he wanted to fail him. Luckily, Inspector Ne arrived and told him that the OPDE changed the exams, or, well, just changed the order of the questions. Anyone who had studied would have solved it. But the teacher's student had the answers. So that's why she was the only one who got a 0. The teacher was furious, but he thought no one would believe them. Luckily, Gunde put microphones in the academy and recorded the teacher's entire conversation. In the next scene, we see that the rival congressman attacks the minister. He said that all his actions are based on simple revenge, and that he is using the OPDE to boost his political career. Since the school case was already over, he decides to reveal the facts. The teacher had connections with many students, whose parents were important businessmen and politicians. One of them was a congressman who was accusing him. The congressman tries to deny everything, but the Minister of Education had all the evidence, so he tells him to shut up once and for all, or he'll not publish his daughter's photo on the OPDE page. Then he clarifies that the OPDE is there to defend the victims of the system that is supposed to protect them and give them the best education. With those words, he manages to win the trial, and the OPDE remains in place. Back at the school, the OPDE was leaving, but the student goes to them to thank them. He confesses to them that he was about to give up. But thanks to them, he will be able to keep studying. Then they remove the books and posters of the corrupt teacher, arrest the accomplices, and take the teacher to apologize to Yeti. The next case is about a kindergarten teacher. The mother of one of her students harassed her so much that it led her to make a fatal decision. Fortunately, Inspector Rim arrived and stopped her. Seeing her condition, she told her that she must take a mandatory vacation. Apparently, it was the teacher's mother who called the OPDE so they could save her daughter. That's why the inspector will now take charge of her class. But since it's a kindergarten, she can't use force, which is why she doesn't know how to deal with the little ones. At the end of the day, she ends up very tired. That's how she realizes that teachers are truly admirable and that it takes a real calling to be a good teacher. Teacher Kim loved her job and was very happy to teach her class. But the little boy's mother, Lim, was too demanding. She told her not to speak harshly because it could hurt her son's self-esteem. At first, the teacher didn't suspect anything. She thought she was just a concerned mother. But as the days went by, the lady sent her more and more reproachful messages and even criticized her on her days off. The teacher stopped responding to her, but the lady managed to find her social media and started judging her even for the clothes she wears, using the excuse that it could confuse her son. The teacher complains to the principal, but instead of supporting her, she tells her to just delete her Instagram, since arguing with parents is a lost cause. Teacher Kim loved her job, so she deleted her social media for the sake of the children. Then she remodels a classroom to turn it into a fortress for little Lim. In that place, he feels very safe and can make friends with the other children. Everything seemed to be going well until one day an accident happened. Another child pushed little Lim, but he got angry and threw a ball at the other child's eye. The teacher didn't stop him because she feared his mother. The other child's mother was willing to solve everything. But Lim's mother was furious. She said it was all the other child's fault and that he should apologize. This led to the parents' committee being called. Lim's mother was acting crazy and wanted the teacher to testify in favor of her son. That's why she got her private number and started harassing her. Teacher Kim was terrified. The situation got to the point where she had to turn off her phone. But the lady didn't stop there. Somehow, she managed to find out where she lived and started harassing her even when she confronted her. The lady blamed her and told her to submit her resignation letter. The next day, the boy's father goes to the school. The teacher tries to stop him, but the man is very aggressive and almost hits her. Teacher Kim filed a complaint, but instead of correcting her behavior, the lady became even more violent and also filed a complaint against the teacher for alleged mistreatment. Miss Kim tells her that she never mistreated her son or any other child, but the woman says that the authorities will decide that. Anyway, if she's innocent, she'll just have to offer. Even though the teacher has to go to the police station every day, she endures it and keeps going. But as time goes by, Lim's mother accuses her on social media and even posts her personal information. This causes her to be harassed, and the other parents start to withdraw their children. The teacher was devastated and didn't know what else to do. That's when she made that tragic decision. Fortunately, her mother called the OPDE. After analyzing the data, they discovered that this, it turned out, lay with the parents. They report the teachers without evidence, and even so, the police have to investigate. This process can take up to a year. And during that time, the teachers are unprotected. That's why now the OPDE wants to take their side and prevent those abuses from happening. In the next scene, we see that Lim's mother went to confront the new teacher. He decides to take her side and agrees with everything she says. She gets happy and asks him to keep her informed about everything. Inspector Na uses this to his advantage and starts calling her all the time, even asking her how he should greet her son. He calls her day and night, until the lady gets fed up and goes to the school to ask the teacher to stop bothering her, because supposedly her husband is furious. Hearing this, Inspector Na searches for the husband at work, and upon finding him, begs for forgiveness on his knees. He tells him not to bother his wife again, and please not to hurt him. Mr. Na acts very differently at work. He's completely submissive and docile, nothing like how he treated Teacher Kim. At home, he complains to his wife, and the poor child sees and hears everything. The next day, Mrs. Na complains to the principal. The principal stands her ground and tells her to file a formal complaint, or go to the Ministry of Education, or better yet, directly to the president. Mrs. Na gets angry and promises that the principal will regret it. Then she goes to the classroom to take her son, and later gathers the other mothers to complain, but the inspector had gotten ahead and complained first. Then he tells her that he reported her for mistreatment. She asks him what he will do if that's not true. The inspector tells her that he will just write a letter of apology. Then he also posts online that the lady harasses the teachers. Because of this, the other mothers turn against her. Then she wants to look for Teacher Kim, but she was running toward the school. The lady follows her, but the inspector was waiting for her. When she sees him, the lady gets very angry, and she tells him that she will report him to the OPD, since her nephew works there. But the inspector knows it's not true. Then he tells her that the only one hurting her son is herself. Teacher Kim was with little Lim. He had called her from his mother's phone to apologize for what he did to her. He confesses to her that he feels like his mother hates him, because she's always yelling and never smiles when she's with him. Hearing this, the lady can't help but feel guilty. Time later, she and her husband are taken to court. Both are found guilty of harassment. And the Minister of Education states that to prevent this from happening again, an investigator will be sent. When there is a complaint against a teacher, this will help prevent damage to their reputation and also their lives. After that, Teacher Kim goes back to teaching her classes as usual. Days later, the minister's popularity increases, which gives them some relief to keep working. At night, they see some boys stealing a car and mistreating a girl. The inspectors try to stop them, but the teenagers were out of control. Because of that, the inspector starts a chase. The teenagers were completely crazy. They didn't care about anything at all. Luckily, the inspector managed to stop them with a bicycle at the police station. The boys were 14 years old, so they couldn't be held criminally responsible. That's why they could do whatever they wanted and would only get a warning. Their school tutor arrives at the station and explains to the UPDE that these boys are hopeless. That's why the next day they're going to investigate the vandals' school. But the young criminals had the whole school under their control. Not one of their classmates was willing to testify against them, so they need to find a victim. That's how they managed to find their hideout, and inside it there was a girl locked up. When they took her to the infirmary, she was terrified and didn't want to testify against the vandals. But when they check her things, they find some pills. Apparently those young delinquents were selling them at school, getting their classmates addicted. At first, they gave the pills away, promising gradually they raised the price. Once students were dependent, they sold the pills at very high prices. Since they couldn't afford it, the boy forced them to work as delivery people. The girl tried to report them to the police, but since they were minors, they were released the next day. After that, Yoon Yeonji gave up and realized she was trapped. That's why no one at school dared to report them. The girl was very scared, but the inspector promises her that she will protect her, and that this time it will be different. The next day, the OPD gets a drug-sniffing dog and starts gathering all the delinquents. Since they are lost causes, they plan to take them to a reformatory. But even so, the kids still had a defiant attitude. The minister managed to get them admitted since they were repeat offenders and didn't seem to want to change after being examined and treated like criminals. Some were crying, but the leader of the group still had a defiant attitude. He believed it was just a game and they'd leave soon. Inspector Ream says they can go if they manage to hit her. The boys thought it would be easy, but she ends up teaching them a lesson. After this, they start a rigorous routine where they have to do what they've never done before: attend classes and be obedient. At lunchtime, the inspector tells them to act tough with these boys, so she sends them to the front of the line. The others look at them and warn them that the favorites have a hard time. Then they make them wash the dishes. But they were spoiled kids who had never done that before. Because of this, the leader of the Vandals lunges at the superior and attacks him for making him wash the dishes. When the guards arrive, the superior tells them that the boy didn't attack him. He just slipped and he helped him. This really confuses the Vandals. At night, they find out that this boy was one of the most dangerous, because at first he was bullied at school. But one day, he took revenge and took down all his bullies. When they hear this, the boys are afraid of him and the leader of the Vandals is terrified. Later, a spoon went missing, and the leader of the Vandals saw the superior hide it in his pocket. When he reported him, there was nothing, but immediately after, the superior pulled out a spoon and attacked the Vandal. He tells him that he already has the maximum sentence, and that adding one more man to his list won't make any difference, so he'd better watch out. Hearing this, the Vandal wet himself in fear. In the next scene, we see that their parents were protesting for their little angels. But the minister told them that they would soon have a fair trial. Seeing their children terrified, the parents make threats, but the inspector exposes everything their little angels have done. Even so, the parents try to justify their children by saying that they didn't know what they were doing because they're just kids and that they should have a second chance. But the minister responds that it's all their fault because they didn't correct them when they should have. Now OPDE will take care of correcting them. The Vandals beg for forgiveness, but the ones who should forgive them are their victims. At that moment, John appears and tells them that he will never forgive them for what they did to him. The leader of the Vandals stands up and tries to attack her, but the inspector stops him cold. Then they are locked up again in the reformatory. They are scared. They know that inside they are the weakest, and that their rebellious attitude will only bring them more trouble. Later, Inspector Ene gives a soda to the superior. Apparently, it was all an act to reform the boys. The superior wanted to help them so that no one else would end up like him. Suddenly, one of the delinquents approaches the Vandal and tells him that his boss wants to eliminate loose ends. Luckily, a boy steps in his way and manages to save him. This boy was the one who killed the inspector's fiancée. And his wound wasn't that serious, but the boy takes the opportunity to apologize to the inspector. He prefers not to answer him. The minister congratulates him for keeping his composure and promises to buy him a drink. When they arrive at the office, a man, Mr. Ishum, bursts in to demand an audience. He had a lot of evidence about a betting app that operated only in schools. He already filed all the complaints, but the authorities didn't respond to him. That's why he didn't know what else to do and desperately went to the OPDE. His son lost a lot of money on the app. As a good father, he decided to pay his debt. His son promised not to do it again, but a few weeks later he got into debt again. And this time it was much more money. His father paid his debt once again. But his son's friend gave him a special phone to keep playing, and once again he got into debt. This time, the thugs went to his workplace and threatened him in front of everyone. Since he didn't have any money left, the man had to quit his job to get his severance pay and pay off his son's debt. But his son got into debt once again, and even ran away from home to keep playing. The father was desperate. OPDE was his last option. When the investigation began, Gunde infiltrated the school. There he discovered that it was worse than they had imagined. Absolutely everyone was addicted to gambling. Soon they also invite Gunde, even offering him a 50,000 won bonus. The next step was for Gunde to get into debt, but he thought the game was pretty easy. If you know math, you could always win. So the inspector tells him that everything he wins will be a bonus. Gunde plays through the night. At first he wins a lot of money, but after midnight he loses everything and ends up in debt for more than 1,000,000 won. The next day his partner tells him he must keep playing to recover his money. Since he doesn't have any left, his partner introduces him to a guy who lends money with very low interest, only 3%, but it was 3% daily, and compound interest applies. In 1 month, 800,000 won turned into almost 3,000,000 won. But to keep up with the plan, Gunde lost more and more money until he owed more than 20 million won. Since he couldn't pay, they sent people to collect him. but the inspector had to watch him. However, she gets distracted by eating, and while Gunde is playing, he disappears. Without leaving a trace, the criminals force the kids to steal and commit all kinds of crimes. Gunde can't do it, so they decide to take him to their offices, where they have him send invitations for the games. He tries to warn the OPDE, but the boss's son warns him that they're being watched. Then the servers go down and they wanted to take it out on the kids, to protect them. Gunde tells him that he can fix it, so they take him to the boss, and he warns him that if it doesn't work, he'll be in trouble. Gunde manages to fix it, and the boss rewards him with a good meal. Afterwards, the boss's son faints from exhaustion, and they take him out like trash. Meanwhile, at the OPD, the inspectors discover that there was a hidden message in the platform's advertisement. Gunde had sent a message in Morse code. That's how they find out where he is. When they arrive, the inspector was acting crazy. She starts hitting everyone and shouts for them to give her back her precious Gunde. Since no one answers her, the inspector beats them up. After defeating them all, they manage to find him. She is very happy that he is safe. And then they help the victims. The inspector has to go after their leader, but before getting there, he had to fight against their bodyguards. They were very strong, but the inspector was invincible. After defeating them, the boss tries to escape like a coward. But the inspector was much faster and manages to stop him before he gets away. Since he was older, he tells him that he will discipline him in a tougher way and gives him a few good slaps. When everything is over, Gunde was scared and complains to the inspector for abandoning him. She tells him that she's very sorry and that from now on she will protect him for the rest of his life. He asks her, "What did you mean by that?" And the inspector tries to change the subject. The next day, the man thanks the minister for saving his son, but he confesses that he no longer trusts him. He fears that at any moment he might start gambling again. The minister tells him that it's normal and that his duty as a father is not to give up on his son. The young man, for his part, was angry with his friend for getting him addicted to gambling. The inspector urges them to change, consider their struggling parents, and improve their lives, since their parents suffer most from their poor choices. Then the inspector forces them to work so they can pay back the money their parents lost, and they also had their phones taken away. To prevent this, the inspector wanted to buy Gunde a new cell phone. But while choosing models, they discover that the betting app had returned, so it's better to keep Gunde away. Later, we find out that the minister was fighting to become a presidential candidate, and the UPDE was giving him a lot of popularity. That's why his rival was desperate, and wanted to get rid of him and the UPDE. The next day, a guard arrives at the deputy's office with evidence to destroy the UPDE. Then, the deputy meets with the guy who killed the inspector's fiancé, and they both agree to work together to bring down the UPDE. Later, the office proposes to do urine tests in schools, but the most prestigious ones reject it. Gunde says that it's very common to take pills for concentration in these schools. Corruption en estas escuelas. Many students go there to be able to get into medical school, and since the competition is fierce, many resort to these pills. The next case is about a boy who abused those pills during one of his exams. He collapsed before finishing it, and they took him to the infirmary. The first thing he asks his mother is if he answered all the questions. He says no. So she gives him a pill so he can go finish it. The lady was obsessed with her son getting into medical school. She didn't care about anything else, not even her son's health. The UPDE wants to do a urine test on the advanced class, but all the mothers were against it, since supposedly their children were very busy. The inspector says, if they don't take the test, they can't be admitted to. After taking the test, Hyunmi's mother scolds her son for fainting. She tells him to get into medical school and not to give up on medicine. We discover why Hyunmi's mother went so far. When she moved to Gangnam, they told her that her son was far behind. The competition for medical school is the fiercest of all. It's not something that's decided in high school, but something parents choose from the moment their child is born. From then on, everything they do is planned so their child can be admitted to medical school. Seeing that she was at a disadvantage, the lady decides to sell her house and moves near her son's school so she can supervise his studies. She felt inferior to her brother-in-law, who was a doctor, which is why she wanted her son just not to become a doctor. Once they settled in, she did nothing but live for her son, even joining a group of mothers with the same goal. It was them who recommended the concentration pill to her, But when she saw that he didn't get into the advanced class, she decided to look for something stronger. That's how a guy contacts her and offers her a medicine with the promise that her son will become the best in his class. After taking it, Hyunmin got into the advanced class, and his mother was very happy. Back to the present, it turns out that the pills the kids were taking were mild, but they were still illegal because they weren't safe. But the pills that Hyunmin was taking were lethal. They were the same pills that the vandals from the previous school were selling. Hyunmin's results were alarming. Those pills were a deadly mix. Lethal pills that he offers to his son. Hyunmin was one dose away from losing his life. That's why the inspectors try to call him. But the boy's mother doesn't answer. She was still obsessed with medical school, so that's why she was about to give her son a pill. Luckily, the inspectors arrived on time, but the lady kept being stubborn. That's why. Inspector Rim used her special forces skills and came in through the window to save the boy. Even after they explain what's happening, the lady still doesn't understand. The inspector scolds her because she should have noticed the side effects and still forced her son to keep taking the pills. She says that everything will be over once he gets into medical school, so she wants to go get her son so he can keep studying. The inspector tells her that from now on she is forbidden to see her son, and if she likes medical school so much, then she should study to become a doctor herself. In the next scene, we see Hyunmin in very serious condition. Dae comments that when he sees the boy, he sees himself, since his mother also wanted him to become a doctor. But that was really overwhelming. For his part, the inspector tells the lady that she must follow the same routine as her son. Only when she can pass an exam will she be worthy of seeing her son. The lady studies as best she can, but as the days go by, she realizes how hellish the addiction is. The boy, for his part, was fighting against his addiction. With Gundae's help, he got through the first days. So he remembers that he didn't take the pills to concentrate, but to please his mother. The pills helped him cope with his miserable life. Back to the lady, she wanted to escape, but the inspector tells her that she can't leave because her son didn't have that option. The lady assures him that she sacrificed everything for her son, but the inspector replies that it's the other way around. Her son sacrificed everything for her. The lady realizes that she conditioned her son from a very young age. She always told him that he had to become a doctor, and that this was the only way to repay his parents' sacrifice. The boy grew up believing that when Dae tells him to study what he likes, Hyunmin responds that he doesn't even know what he likes, he only knows what his mother likes. So Gundae suggests they find out together. That's why they go to the library to read children's stories. A few days later, the inspector brings the lady to her son. He was already better. The lady asks him again if he has been studying, but this time Hyunmin stands his ground. He tells her that he won't take the exam that year. He'll take it next year, but it won't be for medical school. His mother didn't agree, but Hyunmin had already made his decision. He would no longer live to please his mother, but to be happy. In the next scene, the minister comes out to report another successful case, but they haven't won yet, because study drugs are very common, and many parents give them to their children. That's why before every exam, urine tests will be conducted, and those who have taken the pills will be disqualified. The inspector, for his part, hands over the evidence, and there he discovers that there were some pills with exactly the same initials. When he analyzes it, he discovers that his fiancée had drawn them in her diary. It turns out that Cheol was indeed bad and would soon be released, thanks to the help of the lawmaker. After being released, the boy returns to school. He claimed to be sorry and wanted to continue with his studies as the law dictates. The Minister of Education was furious, but he couldn't do anything because it would be considered a personal vendetta. The inspector, for his part, goes to the boy to tell him that he is on probation. That's why the other boys start to bully him, since he can't defend himself. They think he will be an easy target. But Cheol had other plans. In the afternoon, he goes to the OPDE office and reports a case of school bullying, but it was for his classmate. When starting the investigation, the inspector promises not to let his emotions get the best of him. The victim's name was Sunbi on the outside. He seemed like a normal boy. He even had friends. When the inspector investigates thoroughly, he discovers that he was basically their walking Wi-Fi hotspot. The boys he hung out with forced him to carry a Wi-Fi hotspot and a portable battery. He tried to deny it. But when his supposed friends arrive, it's clear that he's afraid of them. Day tries to infiltrate their group, but a university classmate recognizes him. So he tells the inspector that it's her turn now. She pretends to be a nerd so that the bully will bother her, and that way she can record his voice to clone it. Afterwards, they use that to call Sunbi and ask him for the password, and that's how they discover that his classmates are taking advantage of him. They didn't just ask him for Wi-Fi, but also streaming accounts, scooter accounts, Uber, and even his parents' bank accounts. They also use his profile and his number to buy things and not pay for them. When he tries to confront his classmate, the classmate threatens him and tells him it's his problem. He's B. He complains to his mother, but the bully reveals that he sent inappropriate videos to his sister, making him look like the bad guy in all of this. He can't do anything but endure it. But the card expenses kept getting bigger. His mother was desperate and didn't know what to do anymore. She thought her son was hopeless. Next day, Cheol convinces the boy to report the bully to the OPDE. But the accused had reported him first, meaning that now Son B became the bully. And that's how a school disciplinary hearing begins. B claims that he is the victim and that his so-called friends used his accounts to spend his money and scam people. But he didn't have any evidence, since everything had been done with his accounts. Because of that, the school committee rules against him. Since it's the first time, Son B only has to apologize and promise not to do it again. Here we find out that due to the increase in bullying cases, there were specialized lawyers who even sold manuals so that their misdeeds would go unpunished. Unthinkable. The inspector doesn't know what to do, but he asks B not to give up, because if he stays silent, nothing will change, and he'll have to keep suffering in silence for the rest of his life. B shouts that it's unfair and asks the inspector to help him. The next day, Inspector Rim infiltrates the school. With Yoon-dae's help, she acts like a professional nerd. The bullies believe everything and start treating her well to make her their new Wi-Fi. But the inspector already had everything planned. She tells them that she did the same thing at her previous school, so everything will be easier. That's why she asks for their phones to connect them. The bullies don't suspect anything, and Yoon-dae hacks their phones to get access to all their accounts. With this, they start spending their money, give away their accounts to other countries, and the inspector also uses bad words in the games to get them banned. Since she's very rude, they got suspended for 300 years. Then they use his scooter and leave it at an unauthorized spot. The bully has to go pick it up so he doesn't get charged, but the inspector had already posted an ad giving away the delinquent scooter. Some thugs show up, and since they were tougher, they beat him up for scamming them. The bully finds out it was the inspector, so he goes to the school to confront her, but she was much stronger and tells him that they're just getting started. Since he can't beat her, he grabs a chair. But the inspector starts screaming and pretends to be the victim, then calls the committee. This time, the bully is in Bae's place. Just like him, he had no evidence. Also, the inspector came to the victim's defense. The inspector exaggerated everything and claims to be so traumatized that she can't even move. The boy gets angry and demands that she tell the truth, but the inspector stops him cold and tells him that he didn't do that to Seung-bae. Then they reveal the whole truth about the case. The boy, although he went through the same thing, didn't think it was that serious since he never hurt Bae, but the inspector tells him that there are many types of violence. And the worst part of this whole case was that Seung-bae had to apologize, even though he was the victim. With this, the bully must apologize and will receive a punishment. Seung-bae thanks the OPD for their help, and his mother vows to trust him more. That night, the inspector visits the spot where he once met his fiancée, accompanied by his father-in-law. Mother-in-law and father-in-law to where they once met his fiancée. The minister drank a lot. That day was the anniversary of his daughter's death, so both of them were very sad. In the next scene, the thug complains to Cheol about losing the case, revealing he was the one who persuaded him to file the complaint. First, Cheol tells him that everything went well, at least for him. Then he pushes him because he needs there to be a victim from the OPD. After that, he goes to the congressman to give him a recording. In it, the thug claims that his life was ruined because of the OPD. With that, and his accident, they could destroy them. The congressman knows it was the boy's doing, so he tells him that he regrets getting him out of prison. The boy replies that it wasn't like that. Actually, he planned everything. The congressman was simply a wild card he used to move his plans forward. In the end, both of them want to take down the OPD. That's why the congressman agrees to work with him. Gunde had managed to see the camera across from it, the school, and it seemed like someone had pushed the bully. That's why the inspector goes to confront Cheol. He doesn't hold anything back. He tells her she's like his fiancée. The teacher was also a busybody and did the same thing he did. When she found out, instead of reporting him to the police, she went to him to try to change him. That's why they're the perfect couple, and that's why both of them will end up the same way. Cheol was the criminal mastermind behind all the pills. He had the brilliant idea to sell them in schools. That way they would have an endless source of customers and also new workers. The best part is that since they were minors, they couldn't go to prison. When he hears that, the inspector gets very angry and gives him a good punch, but Cheol uses that to his advantage and plays the victim. To bring down the OPD, the congressman also uses that to turn everyone against the OPD and manages to get it suspended. It seemed like everything was over. Cheol is happy and reopens his business, this time going big, and even hires Sunbae as a delivery man. But so he doesn't get suspicious. He tells him he's selling sneakers. That's how he starts getting more and more orders. His classmates were so obsessed with money that they preferred delivering over attending classes. Soon the teachers also notice the absence of the OPD. Without them, the students go back to doing whatever they want. Sunbae knows something bad is happening. So he takes one of the packages and wants to report it to the inspector. But Cheol gets ahead of him and catches him. The pills were everywhere, disguised as vitamin C, but the math teacher picked some up and took them to the OPD. Apparently, it was all a plan to dismantle Cheol's gang once and for all. That's why the inspector attacked him. Also, they called all the teachers from the schools, but many didn't respond to the call. But some teachers who know the importance of education answered the call. Also, the inspector and Gunde called some reformed students to help them collect all the pills. Cheol realizes it. He wants to escape with his accomplices, but he sets a trap for the OPD. Inspector Rim falls into it and was completely out of control. To catch the bad guys, she jumps from the 3rd floor, saying that she already knew how to fly. Cheol tries to escape, but the inspector goes after him. The inspector was drugged, so she could barely stand. The thugs take advantage of this to attack her, so Gunde uses his technology to protect her and manages to defeat the thugs. The inspector, for his part, is confronted by many gang members, but he defeats them without much trouble. Then he catches up with Cheol, who tells him that he will end up like his fiancée, since he had kidnapped Sunbae, and his accomplice threatens to hurt Sunbae if the inspector fights back. Cheol stabs the inspector, and he can't do anything, but Malgundi manages to get the inspector to react. She jumps into action. And saves Sunbae. Now, the inspector can defend himself. She tells Cheol that it's time for him to be taught a lesson, and she starts disciplining him. Seeing that he can't win, Cheol tells her that she really is the perfect match for the teacher. The two of them are the same. That's why he asks her to finish him off once and for all. But the inspector tells him that he will act according to the law. This makes Cheol feel very regretful, because it means that his teacher really wanted the best for him, and he ended up killing the only person who cared about him. Afterwards, the teacher appears to thank the inspector. Then the criminals are arrested. The Minister of Education keeps his composure and tells Cheol that he will no longer be able to leave prison. But when he finds out that he stabbed his son-in-law, he goes crazy and wants to take justice into his own hands. Prison, when everything is over, the minister states that although the OPD's methods are not correct, they are necessary, because it helps the teachers and the students who became victims. Because of a broken educational system. That's why they won't dissolve the OPD until the schools are safe. In the final scene, everyone thanks the teacher for starting the change. Gunde and the inspector liked each other a lot, but they still hadn't come to an agreement. He also ended his rival's career, but it wasn't because he attacked him. It was because he agreed to work with Cheol, even knowing what he did to his colleague. In the final scene, we see that the inspector arrived at another school to restore order and discipline the rebellious students in the traditional way. That's how this drama ends. Apparently, Koreans didn't like it very much, because according to them, they don't believe in an eye for an eye and think that kids should be disciplined in other ways. From what I found out, some of these cases are based on real events, like the case of the congressman's son and the kindergarten teacher. I also saw that the manhwa is more intense, and because of that, they had to modify the script. In fact, the actor who signed on first quit because of the controversy, and in the end, Kim Moo-yeol was the one who got the role of the inspector. Thank you very much for making it to the end of the video. I hope you enjoyed the summary. If you did, I invite you to give me a like and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any summaries. Thank you very much. Thanks again, and I'll see you in the next story.